We are all feeling the cold. Tonight we'll be looking at Labour's ban on puberty blockers for trans children, the question of farmers blocking roads, Luigi Mangione, Shapiro's, and the hypocrisy of the right. Excuse me. Curtis is joining me tonight, and we are both ill. Curtis was just saying how he's having to cut my sniffing out in post when we go over the videos. How are you doing, Curtis?
Yeah, no, I'm still recovering. I think I feel a lot better than you do.
Yeah.
It started on like Tuesday.
Yeah. Step around. Yeah, we move exactly, and it's fine because it will be like a more casual and relaxed, as the debrief is a more casual and relaxed show. So we'll react to some of your comments throughout the show. If you want to post your comments in the chat, we'll just keep an eye on the chat and try and keep up with your comments. But if we don't catch anything, it's probably nothing personal. It's probably just that we've missed the comments as they've gone by. I'm sure whatever you guys are commenting is absolutely brilliant. So with that, should we go on to our first story? The assassination of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, has united those on the right and left who have little sympathy for them, but it has also united the two Shapiros, Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire and Arguing with Children, and Governor Josh Shapiro of the Democrats. Let's take a look, first of all, at what Ben Shapiro had to say, and then we'll discuss.
Somebody like Brian Thompson is by suggesting that he is motivated not by a desire to keep the company working and operative in a very difficult regulatory environment with a bizarre system of subsidies and administrative details and all the rest of that. And you can disagree with his decisions, think they're wrong, but that's the actual... Instead, what you do is you say he's evil and he's just trying to maximize profit. Once you start...
Sorry about that.
No.
It's
somebody like Brian Thompson is by suggesting that he is motivated not by a desire to keep the company working and operative in a very difficult regulatory environment with a bizarre system of subsidies and administrative details and all the rest of that. And you can disagree with his decisions, think they're wrong, but that's the actual... Instead, what you do is you say he's evil and he's just trying to maximize profit. Once you start saying the evil profiteers are trying to harm Americans, like that's their goal. Their goal is to harm, and I'm telling you, this is on both sides of the aisle. It is on the left predominantly, but there's a swath of people on the right who are also doing this routine. It's ugly. Now, I will say that there are elites who have lent credibility to this particular argument through their malfeasance. I think COVID had a lot to do with this. You had people like Anthony Fauci who were giving the platonic lies to the American public, lying for their own purposes in many cases, quashing their political opposition. But the generalized argument that is made too much in politics, and it does boil the pot, okay, it leads to an increasing temperature that justifies violence, is this language that disagreements on policy are not because of a pragmatic inability to come to a conclusion or starting from different first principles or using logical deductions that end up with different conclusions. No, the actual reason that, for example, the healthcare system is a mess is because Brian Thompson is an evil person who is trying to kill grandma, right? Or the reason that the oil companies are attempting to pump more oil is not because there is high demand for carbon-based fossil fuels, because it's still the most effective form of energy production on the planet. It's because they want to destroy the earth and don't care about destroying the earth. Right? Or the reason the bank denied your loan is not because the bank looked at your loan, assessed the risk, and found that it wasn't worth the price. It's because the bank manager is actually Mr. Potter and is trying to deny your bank loan because he himself is evil.
We've lost your audio, I think.
Yeah, that was me. I muted myself. This is
4 years since COVID, and you're still doing the whole mute.
I know. I'm still muting myself on Teams calls. It's been 4 years since COVID. We don't do this on Teams. I wish we did this on Teams. It would be so much simpler.
It would be a lot of fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun and a lot simpler. But yeah. So I just want, first of all, I just want your reaction generally to that Ben Shapiro video, because I think it's quite interesting the way that he frames the argument, right?
Well, I mean, first of all, he kind of like misunderstands our argument, because he says, well, these people think that they're just evil. And like, we're notoriously known as people who say, no, the systems are the issue. So, I mean, that what he does there kind of encapsulates the right wing, which is that they don't understand our arguments, which is why they come up with such bullshit arguments from themselves. You know, it is both true that Brian Thompson is an evil CEO, whilst also saying that the system is the issue. Because even if it wasn't Brian Thompson and it was somebody else, I mean, look, I think specifically Brian Thompson is a piece of shit. We can go into why, but it could be someone else who hasn't been quite as bad or hasn't taken the worst decisions. But it doesn't matter because you have a private healthcare system based on insurance, and people are still angry about that, and so is the left. So he's kind of like using this bank teller analogy, like, oh, the bank teller won't give you a loan because he's really evil. It's like, that's not the way we think. And I suspect he probably knows that, actually, but he's a little weasel and he's a little liar. I do find it funny, though. I checked out that video and went on the comments because when he first made his video about how, oh, the hard revolutionary left are back in this CEO killer. And then most of the comments were like, Ben, what you're on about? This is not a left-right issue. I'm conservative, and like my dad couldn't get treatment, and I think it's disgusting. And he was being called out for basically being an establishment stooge. And it's so funny how he's doubled down on it. I mean, I suppose there's nothing else he can do because that's who he is. He is a little bitch for capital. And the comments are once again like, you're completely misunderstanding the issue.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there, and that was what the point I was hoping you would draw from it is like the way that Ben Shapiro is presenting it is that people are evil because they are, or we view people as evil because we think they're inherently evil in some way. When of course, like even though Brian Thompson, you're right, is a bad person, I'd also say he's a product of his environment. He's a product of the system that we live in, right? And that is the overriding point that a leftist would make. But at this particular juncture, because there's so much support for revision of the US healthcare system, Ben Shapiro can't admit that. He can't go, oh well, they're making a systemic critique. It has to go straight for, oh well, they think he's the devil reincarnate and not somebody who's making rational decisions.
That is exactly what the right wing do. They do that. I mean, think about like not just the last like few years, but if you ever check out Fox News and you check out the Republican Party, that has been the entire rhetoric. But if you want to look more recently, you can look on some of Trump's rallies, and some of the people on there are saying Kamala Harris is like the devil. Like the literal devil, and they're evil. That's the way they speak. Now, I can say I think Harris is evil for being complicit in the genocide, but that's not because she was born evil and she's kind of demon. I mean, as a human being, I'm sure if we met her in person, she'd be a perfectly pleasant person, but that doesn't really matter. But that's the way the right wing operate. And again, for me, the more I do work in media and journalism, the more I realize that 99.99% of right-wing arguments and rhetoric is pure projection. So they'll say, this is what the left do, this is what they are, when it's them. It's always been them, and they just project it onto other people. So if he wants to think that we're saying that healthcare CEOs are evil because they were born that way, well, either you're misinterpreting it on purpose, or you're thick. But it's always been a rhetoric from the right. You get, like, honestly, you go on Fox News, as a sewer, by the way, the way they speak about the left, and the way, not just the left, but just people they don't like, they will say they're evil and terrible people. So it's just pure projection.
It's also, I think, how they justify lying themselves, right? I can lie. It's okay because these guys are lying. I can think of these people as the devil, but it's okay because they think of me as the devil. Like I can represent them this way because that's how they represent us. And it's not actually true. The way that they frame it, because they assume that everybody thinks the way that they do. They assume it's team sports. They assume it's team sports and vibes. And the fact is, I think the reason that education is such a liberalizing or a force that drives people to the left rather than the liberal side, but liberalizing when conservatives do it, is because it breaks that image that they have, that it's all down to just like team sports and vibes. And politics is just, well, I have these sets of beliefs. There's not much more to it. And there's a side that was actually right. Like the significant thing about Galileo is that he was right. He was correct about what he was saying, right? Otherwise, nobody would remember him. And that's the significant thing about like figures like Karl Marx or Clement Attlee, is the thing that backs them up is the evidence that followed just proves them right. Yeah,
Well,
I just wanted to.
and that's what's so ironic. And in that clip there, and obviously in a few of his other clips, he's got his laptop and he's got the sticker, "Facts don't care about your feelings." And that's a famous line from him. It's the one he's pushed forward. But him and all his other right-wing mates have always been emotional. They've never cared about facts. The right have always, I mean, they're anti-science for one. How much rhetoric has come from the right wing about like COVID and stuff and so many other things and climate change, but the right never care about facts. So once again, it's like pure gaslighting. And I know that term is so annoying because people overuse it, but it's so appropriate to use against the right wing. That's all they do.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Did we mark a couple of comments?
I've only marked one so far, but if you've done a few, that's
Oh no, I just wanted to draw attention because while we were setting up, see if I can find the comment now. Well, it's not a comment, sorry. Jessica Milestone joined as a member.
Yes, welcome.
And yep, I think I can. Wait, will that? I don't know what I'm doing with this software. Hang on a second. There we go. That's done it. Yeah, Jessica Milestone became a member. So thank you. You can become a member. Please do become a member. It really helps the channel out. And we really appreciate it. On another note, you did mark a comment. Where was it? I'm rubbish. I'm getting used to this new software. Sorry about this, guys.
I have. Ooh, let me filter.
Oh no, I think one of us hit the wrong. There we go.
That's the one.
There we go. Does Ben Shapiro have a drop-down menu so we can change his voice to something less robotically annoying? It's a good question. It's a good question. We've been wondering it for a while.
I feel a bit bad relaying Ben Shapiro clips because people in our audience have to watch it or listen to it.
Yeah, that's the downside.
Such a great in voice. And that's, do you know what, as well, like his argument tactic is to speak really, really fast. And that's worked for so many people. I suspect there are so many people who go, yeah, Ben Shapiro, God, he's so smart. They actually don't understand what he's saying. It's just because he speaks so fast, it's verbal diarrhea. So it looks like he wins the debate. But break down what he actually says, and it's nonsensical like every other right winger. He's pretty good at communicating. If your goal is to confuse and frustrate your audience and your opponent, and it looks like you win, then yeah, he's very good at it.
What was he saying about? I was saying about vibes earlier, right? It's the vibes of intelligence. That's what it is. It's not actual intelligence. And Chris just gifted 5 Turn Left memberships. Thank you so much, Chris. You are a star, and it's nice that you're keeping other people in the membership bubble as well. I like that. That's excellent. Yeah. So,
you want to go to your quote?
Not a quote was gifted by membership. Ah, cool. Yep. No, I didn't. I don't think I meant to put that on screen. Did I put that on screen?
Yeah.
What did you?
Usually, by the way, guys, just so basically, we usually have a dedicated producer, but on our like debrief, because it's a bit more casual, one of us does it. But this is a lot of. I think you've prepped the show for like a normal island show because there's a lot of stuff. Which hey, it's fine, but it just means it's going to be a bit of an unprofessional show.
Yeah,
I think.
Yes, but that's the debrief. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
You know.
Yes. Yep. Cool. Speaking of which, let's have a look at that stuff then. Let's go. Okay. That. Oh, yeah. It is. Sorry. And Ben Shapiro was only one Shapiro to come out and condemning Mangione as the primary villain here. The other was Josh Shapiro, who said this. In America, we do not kill people in cold blood to resolve policy differences or express a different viewpoint. I understand people have real frustration with our healthcare system, and I've worked to address that throughout my career. But I have no tolerance, nor should anyone, for one man using an illegal ghost gun to murder someone because he thinks his opinion matters most. In a civil society, we're all less safe when ideologues engage in vigilante justice. In some dark corners, this killer is being hailed as a hero. Hear me on this, he is no hero. Now, I don't think that vigilantism is good. Like, I don't really think of vigilantism as being something that's good. But Brian Thompson's family can be allowed to mourn. Like, that is a personal thing for them. I think that's a very kind of personal issue for them. It's not where the focus of the discussion should be, though, because there were a set of circumstances that led to this, right? There's a system that led to this. And on the note of Democrat hypocrisy, let's take a look at this video from when the hunt for Mangione was actually going on, because I think it's actually quite telling.
This message is for the U.S. government. I'm curious, the man that you all are looking for in New York, let's say he was hiding in like the basement of an apartment building. Would it be justified to bomb that entire apartment building? Or maybe if he was in a hospital, like in an underground tunnel in a hospital, would it be justified to bomb that entire hospital?
Cool.
These are just some things that I've been thinking about.
That was juddery for me. I don't know why it was juddery for me.
It was right for me, but
okay, brilliant. As long as the audience got it, that's the main thing. I've already seen it. But yes, I really thought that was a good point when we're talking about the value of lives and the value, particularly of Palestinian life. I think it really is worth bringing up that discussion about like, oh, okay, so it is justified to unalive a whole group of civilians, or it's justified to deny thousands of people healthcare, eventually leading to their deaths, in order to either maximize profits or in order to target one individual. Like, I think there's a discussion here about like how we value human life. And actually, I'm gonna throw one more thing on, because I think actually there's a couple more things. We'll get to the end of this bit, and then we'll discuss the things I bring up in unison, if that's all right. Because on the opposite end of the spectrum, Americans have been using references to Luigi Mangione to push back against insurance companies, and in some cases it goes over that line into threats, as USA Today reports. A Florida woman is facing charges after she allegedly made threatening statements to an insurance company by using a phrase police believe is a reference to evidence found in connection to the fatal shooting of United Healthcare CEO of the United Healthcare CEO in New York City. Brianna Boston, 42, of Lakeland, was charged with threats to conduct a mass shooting or an act of terrorism, according to a probable cause affidavit obtained by USA Today. On the 10th of December, the FBI contacted Lakeland police about the threat. Boston is said to have called Blue Cross Blue Shield regarding recent medical claims that were denied. During the end of the recorded conversation, Boston is accused of stating, delay, deny, depose, you people are next, according to police documents. Now, I think this is so important because it wouldn't be such an issue if all of this wasn't so heavily contrasted with the case about Daniel Penny, who actually Curtis made a video about earlier, but I think it's worth bringing it all together, who's being hailed as a hero after killing a homeless man. Now, BBC News has made a report on this, and they said that a 26-year-old man has been acquitted of homicide for putting an unarmed homeless man in a fatal chokehold, a case that sparked weeks of protests and reignited debates over public safety, mental illness, and race. Jurors deliberated for 5 days before declaring Daniel Penny not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in the death of 30-year-old Jordan Neely on a New York City subway train on 1st of May 2023. The verdict comes after prosecutors agreed to drop a more serious charge of second-degree manslaughter on Friday, as jurors could not reach an agreement. Now, later on in the week, J.D. Vance announced that Penny would be invited to Trump's suite to watch a sports game with him this weekend. So, is killing only wrong when you're killing the desperate, right? We've got a connection here. We've got the Palestinians, we've got the homeless, we've got people who are victims of being denied medical claims. There are three groups of people that apparently it's fine to kill, but it seems that, shooting a healthcare CEO, absolutely, I think I agree, is a bad thing and shouldn't be done. But why is so much protection given to certain lives? Why? And it's not just certain lives, but certain lives under certain conditions, right? That the things have to line up. It has to be certain lives. Only certain lives are valued, and only under certain conditions. But there's kind of a lot that we can kind of go off of here, Curtis. I don't know what you want to.
Well, I mean, the story with Brianna Boston is a really chilling one because I'm gonna love, by the way, the whole freedom in America and freedom of speech. Clearly, that infringes upon that. The fact that she was arrested is insane to me because she didn't make a threat. let's be real here. What actually happened? She was on the phone to a health insurer, and clearly they were not covering her, or something happened, and she was angry. And she then said, delay denied, depose. Might be in the wrong order, because that's in the news. And obviously she was arrested, and she said, look, I'm not actually making a threat. I was just really pissed off about my health insurer. And that thing is going on in the media. And like, yeah, I was angry. I said out of frustration. I mean, I was reading an article. I don't know how true it is, because I've heard conflicts. Actually, I've heard Emma Vigeland say that, that apparently she's now been released, but I've not heard that in the news. But what I was reading is that they were trying to get her on terrorism charges, and they were trying to get her on a potential to do mass shooting. She doesn't own a gun.
She doesn't own a gun. I didn't know that.
No, and that's
however,
quite rare for an American.
Yeah, true. However, I do think that there is something that could be a threat in there, and that's when she said she not only said the phrase, but she went on to say, "You guys are next," which I think that possibly crosses the line into.
Okay, so even with that, I would say, I mean, look, if we were going to start arresting people on vague threats like that, I mean, the police would be tied up. I mean, that's why they're probably using illegal surveillance software, which is probably what happened with Luigi, by the way. But that's just conspiracy. But going further than that, even if you say, look, it's probably justified that she was arrested because she did say you guys are next. The fact that they're trying to charge her and she could face up to 15 years in jail through terrorism, you'd have to, that's a major leap because, okay, well, who was the target? Because clearly her threat was a vague one. She said, you're next. So unless you can find like plans in her house where she was going to go for a specific CEO or a specific company at this time or whatever, then how can you say that's a threat? And again, she doesn't own a gun. So to try and charge her with that, under the Terrorism Act, what do they call it under their name, and say that she was going to do a mass shooting is insane. The reason why they've done this, I mean, you might say that arrests are different, but the fact they want to charge her with this is very, very simple. It is to send a message. Simple as possible.
I agree.
They don't like the fact that power are being held to account. No, none of us at Turn Left are saying that we support vigilantism, but that's in Luigi's case, that was his form of holding healthcare CEOs to account, right? Because it's against a powerful person and the target is powerful people, because the police's role in society, not just in America and the UK as well, is to protect capital. That's the number one thing to do. Then of course that is to send a message. They want to lock her up for 15 years because they don't want people getting any other ideas. And you have to look at the civil liberties here. Like, people are allowed to be angry and frustrated, right? If your health insurance company is not covering you, even though you spend the money on it, right? And then you say something out of anger, that should not get you terrorism charges or 15 years in jail. It's absolutely disgusting. It should have never gone as far as, all right, we're doing a house call and we're going to check you out. That's as far as it should have went. But it's clear that power is coming together and it's holding ordinary working people basically to a ridiculously high standard because they're protecting their own class. That's all it is.
For me, I think that a lot of it would depend on how those words were spoken. Like, because I can see a version of events where you say, defend, deny, depose, you guys are next, like, I'm sure it's you guys next. Like, I can see how somebody might, like, kind of jokingly say that on the phone, not say it too seriously, but, like, the tone of it, I think, probably matters in how I would assess it.
I mean, I doubt she said it in a joking way. She probably said it in an angry way.
Probably said it in an angry way. In which case, I'm like,
for me though. I mean, I feel like the arrest sides. I mean, I understand your point on that. That does make sense because look, at the end of the day, you know how many shootings there are in America, and it's not out of the question. I mean, we've just literally seen Luigi kill a healthcare CEO. It's not out of the question that can happen, right? Yeah. So I get. Okay, they're going to arrest her and they're going to check her out, but I don't care how she said it. The fact that they want to basically stick her in jail for 15 years on charges that should not be even in the question, not even in the question, is, the tone of it is irrelevant. It comes back to the point that I think it's just to send a message to people to say, know your place.
Yeah, I think the tone of it is relevant when we're talking about the arrest.
Yeah.
But like I don't think don't think I should have to say this, but 15 years is an incredibly long time for that comment.
God, yeah.
I'm talking. I think even a prison sentence would be harsh for that comment. But I do think that there's a sort of like need to follow up in cases like that. There is a need to sort of like make sure that you're like not allowing, especially in a country that has such a high level of gun violence and such a high high homicide rate compared to other countries. I think there is kind of a need to follow up.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we have a look at another story? Because actually, I want to talk about puberty blockers, which is another area where there could be some difficulty. The UK government has moved for a total ban on puberty blockers. The British Medical Journal reports. The UK government has announced an indefinite ban on the use of puberty blockers for treating under 18s with gender dysphoria after the Commission on Human Medicines advised that continuing to allow them would carry an unacceptable safety risk. The new regulations will extend for an indefinite period emergency measures introduced last May, temporarily banning the use of puberty-suppressing hormones for young people with gender dysphoria. The indefinite ban, which will apply in England, Scotland and Wales, will be reviewed in 2027. In the meantime, the drug will be allowed to be used in a clinical trial recommended by the CAS review, designed to test their safety and effectiveness. NHS England and the National Institute for Care Research aim to recruit the first patients by spring 2025. So let's have a look at this, because the Commission on Human Medicines also recommended a pause. Like, they did recommend a pause, making 8 recommendations, though, and recommendation 3 provides advice for the safeguards that should be put in place for their reintroduction following clinical trials. So they're not actually recommending a total and indefinite ban either. I think it would be a misreading of that to say. I want to draw attention to this study, which is a 2022 study from the American Academy of Pediatrics, published in the Pediatrics Journal, issue 150, number 2, which took 317 trans children and studied their transition. Of those taking puberty blockers, only 1% detransitioned, while 99% continued to identify as binary or non-binary transgender. There is also this study, which is from JAMA Network's Pediatrics Journal investigation, which studied 104 trans children. Gender affirming care, including puberty blockers, were associated with a 73% reduction in suicidality. Now, why am I giving you this information? Well, I'm giving you this information because I need you to understand that the research on this stuff isn't neutral, right? The research on this stuff isn't coming to like an unbiased conclusion here. It's not like, oh, well, they kind of make no difference. No, these make a real and like tangible difference, something that we can study to the lives of young trans people. The regret rate is very, very low, as it is with all transgender care. The regret rate, the detransition rate is very, very low. And the key point as well is that these studies are peer-reviewed studies done by experts. Now, in France, the Archives de Pédiatrie came to the total opposite conclusion of the CAS review, right? This was the French CAS review. It said none of the medical treatment used in the context of hormonal transitioning have marketing authorization for this indication, but these molecules have been used for a time in the pediatric population for other indications, such as precocious puberty and puberty induction. Nevertheless, they have been used for hormonal transition in trans youth since the late 1980s in some countries, and their use in adults goes back even further. In addition, off-label prescription is very common in pediatrics and child psychiatry. It is important to specify before introducing the treatment and to regularly remind adolescents during follow-up that each treatment can be suspended or interrupted at any time if they wish, and that this will not alter the support that they otherwise receive. Now, there's an important caveat here, which is why is off-label prescription so common in children's medicine? Well, because it's difficult to ethically test medicine for pediatric use. The government and the CAS review is asking for a standard which can't be ethically met, right? Namely, double-blind trials, which would force trans children in the placebo cohort to go through a puberty that doesn't fit their identity, and presumably see a 73% rise in their suicidality as a result if they weren't to receive the treatment, because we know that it's associated with a 73% rise in suicidality, to prove that trans kids need these hormones. That's the standard they've got to meet to prove it, right? But an ethics board is never going to approve this, because it's so cruel, right? You have a chance to take away to present to trans kids a massive drop in their suicidality, and you're taking that away. Like an ethics board isn't going to approve this. It's not going to force them to go through an irreversible process. Puberty is an irreversible process in the with the opposite sex characteristics than the ones that they want to be associated with their body and with their identity. So the bar has been set in such a way that trans people can never win. Right? They've been told they have to go through these clinical trials, but the clinical trials can't be performed because in order to do a double-blind trial like that, it would breach the ethical recommendations. It's so complex. But Curtis, what do you make of all this?
Well, I mean, you mentioned in your piece there a lot of the things I was going to bring up.
Cool.
Look, I have no issue with people saying that we need to have more research and more information because, down the line, maybe there is something harmful about puberty blockers. But the point you've just made is that, first of all, when it comes to these clinical trials, the double-blind system is absolutely unethical because, obviously, I don't know how many percentage they might divide up, but let's say 50% receive HRT and the other 50% don't. You're basically forcing trans kids to go through puberty thinking they're taking puberty blockers. Then they hit puberty, they realize, I wasn't given the treatment, and it's too late now. So, of course, no one's going to say we can do these trials. That's going to be okay. But that seems to be the sort of trials that people want in order to see whether puberty blockers are safe. So, in a way, how much more are we ever going to know about puberty blockers if these trials aren't going to be allowed, and they shouldn't be allowed? And that's the question. I suppose my answer to that question is probably there isn't going to be any more research we can do in terms of using those trials. The broader point here, though, is, look, I think it matters who was doing this. I mean, let's talk about Wes Street, and he's the one who's pushing this policy, right? If it was an actual trans ally who said, look, we want to do more trials, we care about trans people, we care about trans kids, like, if there's a chance we're giving them stuff that's bad for them, we all would agree, like, we want to know more information about it. But when it comes from Wes Streeting, who was on the Sun podcast with Harry Cole a few months ago, literally saying that trans people don't exist. I mean, he literally said that. That's not me misrepresenting him. He said, to paraphrase, asked me a few years ago and I would have said that trans women are women and trans men are men. But now I don't believe that. So you literally are saying I don't believe that trans people exist, and they're just... What's the new jargon they say? Trans-identifying male or trans-identifying women. That is just literal transphobia. And that's not even like the transphobia where you'd said something that was transphobic and you didn't mean to. That is like consciously transphobic. And I think we also need to understand his Christianity and his religious beliefs are coming more to the forefront with him. And clearly that's informing his choices, which means he's not, as a health secretary, making public policy on logical arguments and on science. He's doing it on his personal ideological framework, which is really, really dangerous. So first of all, I think we can look at this move as completely in bad faith, especially when what's sickening though is when he's in Parliament, he's saying, I spoke to trans kids, I really care about them. I don't think you fucking do, because I think it's very clear that most of the medical information we've had come out from experts is to say that puberty blockers are safe. Now, here's the kicker, the real kicker. The ban isn't proposed. It's not a blanket ban, by the way. It's not saying anyone under the age of 18 can't use puberty blockers. It's only used for those who suffer from gender dysphoria. So why is it acceptable for cis kids to use it, but trans kids to not use it? That to me sounds like it's ideological, not science-based. So I think when you look at it through that lens, it's clear that this isn't based on actually giving a shit about kids or caring about safety. Otherwise, you would say, well, we need to ban puberty blockers for everyone. And they can't do that. Why? Because puberty blockers has been used for decades. It has been used for decades. And for years and years and years, no one's ever said, oh, I don't think you should give children puberty blockers, because they couldn't attach it to essentially the trans debate. The question of safety has only come up because they've managed to sort of attach it to transgenderism, as they like to, because they like to think it's some kind of ideology, and I'm talking about transphobes here. But if you really, really cared about kids, why weren't you talking about puberty blockers when they're given to cis children? Why ignore that? And actually, these people who want puberty blockers banned I've not heard anyone say we need to do a blanket ban, because at least that's consistent. I still say it's a really bad public policy, but that is consistent. And I think as well, because I was watching a segment with Helena on Navarra Media, and she was also claiming how, like, so some people might say, look, okay, but this is only for under 18s, right? It's those who are already taking HRT or puberty blockers, they're fine. That is true. If you're already taking puberty blockers, I don't think you're affected. But this, to me, and this kind of echo what Helena said, is this feels like a slippery slope, because there are a lot of transphobes and transphobic organizations that support this move that West Streeting is doing. And they're not going to end there. They're going to try and push the envelope as far as possible to then say, actually, we should ban all kind of medical assistance for trans adults. We should just do it entirely. And that's when you know this, again, isn't based on sound public policy. And Helena also said that, look, when trans people go through medical transition at a later age, it's actually far more complicated than it is as a child. So it's not that, okay, well, tough, let's let these trans kids go through puberty, because when they're 18, they can make their own decision. But you don't understand, when people go through puberty, it's like a life altering thing, which is funny, because those in opposition to this will say puberty blockers is something that's life altering, which isn't. It's stopping your puberty. Puberty is the thing that happens in our bodies, which then means that, like, you cannot go back to your life before, right? Puberty blockers just gives you more time.
Yeah.
So for trans people who trans kids, desperately want to have just puberty blockers, and I'm not saying under 18 should go through any kind of surgery or anything, right? But just puberty blockers, which delays the puberty, right? If they don't have that, then they will go through life-changing things such as puberty. And then once again, to say that it's far more complicated, and as Helena literally said, she said it's a lower quality of life for trans people if they have to medically transition later on in life.
Yeah, no, I agree. I remember from that clip, if we're thinking of the same one, Michael Walker brought up a point that was basically like, it's difficult to know because trans, like, if somebody thinks they're trans, if they're suffering from gender dysphoria, they might go through a phase in their life where they're suffering with that gender dysphoria, but that's pre-puberty, and then puberty is like a reset for them. And this point was apparently brought up in the Cash review. And so it can allow some kids to work out whether they're trans or not. Going through puberty can allow some kids to work out whether it's right for them or not, or, it can sort of reset the dysphoria. I can see how that could be an argument, but the problem is as it was the International Journal of Transgender Medicine, which is a academic journal, pointed out, in its critique of the Cash review was full of cis-normative assumptions, right? It's not neutral when somebody who is trans is forced to go through the puberty associated with the gender that they have at birth, right? That's not a neutral thing. That can fuck up their life in so many ways. And again, there's that 73% rise in suicidality, or rather the 73% drop you get when you treat somebody with puberty blockers. That's 73% fall in suicidality among a community that has so much suicidal ideation. That's massive. That's huge. I really can't overemphasize that. I do want to just so FSM pointed out that you've got it wrong. You cannot do double blind, as people will know whether they are getting the placebo and will drop out. Yep, I think I can sort of incorporate that into my points. Yeah, absolutely, they would drop out. But you'd also be forcing them to go, assuming they went through the whole thing. You'd be forcing them to go.
Well, that's kind of because actually
a form of torture, right?
It's like also, even if these trials were given permission, like how would you convince people to say, by the way, 50% of you are getting a placebo? No one's going to say yes to that. So does that mean in that case, are they actually lying and saying you're all going to get puberty blockers, but secretly some of them aren't? Because that's even more unethical. I don't know the specifics of how the trials work, by the way. So I mean, if you want to let me know, obviously leave a comment. So that question from Michael, actually initially I thought was a really good question, because he did say, look, how much do we know, like, does going on puberty blockers and going through medical transition, like, what was he trying to say? Like, does that set the path for you? And like, because he cites the Cash review and saying, well, actually, like, there are people who think they're suffering from gender dysphoria, but later on in life they don't. And actually, if they go through medical transition, it might be the fact that they've done it now, and actually later on they regret it. But as I was thinking, that's probably quite a good question. I was also thinking about the fact that the regret rate is insanely low. So that might probably put that worry to bed, because
Yes.
first of all, if you're denying people, if you're denying trans kids healthcare, they don't get the care they need. They, unfortunately, suicide is high among those people. And then those that do go through transition, the regret rate is really, really low. So I guess that's kind of assumption to say, what about the idea that if we just we don't give them any intervention, we just let them sort of grow up through puberty and then they sort of grow out of it, that surely would be massively overplayed, because, as I said, those two things, suicide rate and regret rate.
Right. Yeah, it's not, by the way, I don't think that it's Michael. It's that Michael is like, going out of his way to be harmful or anything. I don't think it's particularly harmful.
Like, I know we've criticised before, but I thought in that instance, I think he was just being fair.
I think he was trying to be fair, but I also think that that's part of the problem with the cash review, is it starts from cisnormative assumptions, and that is a big problem with when we're talking about trans people in medicine. People often assume that you have to view it through the lens of, first of all, they don't know anything about puberty blockers. So they assume that puberty blockers are really damaging. They hear things like, for example, certain puberty blockers were used in the castration of gay people, when that was a punishment for gay people when they were forcibly castrated. It was Lupron that was used. But the thing is about Lupron, as I understand it, is it's a dosage issue, right? So when your doctor recommends that you drink a glass of water, what they're not recommending is that you drown yourself, right? The dosage actually matters quite a lot. And the amount of Lupron that they were being given is very different to the amount of like puberty suppressing hormones that you would give somebody, on a recommendation. But it's the same as like, to take another medical example. Indeed, the regret rate is higher in hip surgery than for, but that's for my understanding is that's for SRS, sexual reassignment surgery. Hip surgery and knee surgery famously have a higher regret rate. So we should apply the same standard to, if that's what we're going to worry about, if we're going to start worrying about dosage, apply the same standard to paracetamol. Don't prescribe any paracetamol to children, because if they take it a high enough dose, it could be damaging to them. It could be very damaging to them. It could kill them. But I see that as really poor evidence. A lot of what this boils down to is something that Philosophy Tube once said in one of her videos, her early videos on transphobia. And she was quoting David Hume. She said that a little bit of coleslaw is good, but you don't want your meal to be all coleslaw. Just like a little bit of skepticism is good, but you don't want your meal to be all skepticism, right? You don't want your ideas to be all skepticism. And I feel like a lot of the problem with the approach of the British government, the cash review, and this, because the British, we are an outlier. Us and certain US states think that this is a good idea to restrict trans people's healthcare like this. We're very much an outlier. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think a little bit of skepticism is good. However, we are currently all skepticism. We are all beginning from the place of everybody should be cisgender. Why are these people not cisgender? Right? That's the issue.
The underlining thing is that there's something wrong with these people, and that's still pervasive, and it's really harmful. But I was also going to think about, like, when you brought up about dangers, right? I think this debate this very toxic debate, might I add, has been framed as one side is about safety, the other side is about ideological, right? But I was having a discussion with India Willoughby a while back, right? And she was telling me how for those who start HRT and they go on it for years and then they stop, right? That is fatal for some people. It was really quite harrowing the picture she painted, but she said your bones will start to crumble. Like she said, like you'll turn to dust. Again, it's not a very, very nice picture to paint, but I mean, you have to be kind of honest with these discussions, right? And that to me then says, well, those that are trying to make this debate about, right, we need to protect people and we care about safety, and then there's just like trans ideology, right? That's not correct. There's danger, like, no matter where you go, right? Yeah. You could say, all right, puberty blockers may pose a threat. Again, I think based on the evidence we have, doesn't seem like there is, and I think we should go with the scientists, by the way, not with the ideologues, However, if we were to just do public policy based on what transphobes want, It is very, very unsafe, especially for those who started HRT. I don't think they particularly care, though, if I'm honest, about the danger it poses to trans people ones who've already gone through medical transition. But it's being framed as one side's about safety, the other side isn't. No. In my opinion, based on the information we have, supporting trans people as a moral right, of course, but also it's about safety. I think the science is on our side.
And that is a problem that they're going to run into. They can't keep this up where, like, the Cash Review didn't recommend a ban on puberty blockers. Like,
exactly, and that's the thing. And when Wes Streeting says, "Oh, we should implement the Cass Review in full," right? And I'm doing this based on recommendations. You've actually made that policy on a hoof, because you're right. Cass herself didn't even say ban puberty blockers. So what else are you going to do then, Wes? Are you just going to do something even more harmful? Like, you cannot say, even a document which a lot of people have a problem with, right? A lot of trans allies have a problem with this report, right? And he says it's a brilliant report, and still goes even further than the report he's citing, means that this guy is not doing this out of good faith. He's not doing this because he cares. I will happily say I think that Wes Streeting is a transphobe. Not someone who's said and done transphobic things. I think he is a transphobe. I don't give a fuck. I'll put my neck out there by saying that.
Bigotry, I think another thing that came up, I'm sure it was in one of ContraPoint's videos that I saw it. But it was ContraPoint's video on J.K. Rowling. Understanding that people often imagine bigotry as like the KKK or the Westboro Baptist Church. It's a very loud, angry people who are hating all the time. Actually, in this case, bigotry is very much it comes from a place of concern, protecting marginalized groups, protecting the white race, or whatever it happens to be, whatever form of bigotry you want to take. In this case, though, it's sort of like, oh, well, we're protecting the youth. That's the sort of angle that they try and take on it. And that is really hard to like pick up on as a form of bigotry. It's hard for people to like notice that as a form of bigotry. Because the sort of angle of protecting the youth can be used on anyone, and it has certain appeal to everyone, and it makes it really hard to call out what Wes Streeting is doing unless you know the signs to look for, unless you know the people that he's been hanging out with, and the political views that they hold. But yeah, the evidence is not on their side, and it's going to get harder and harder over time for them to support this.
I mean, sorry to cut you off.
No.
I was just saying, though, it started out as that, right? But it is becoming the more sort of over bigotry. Again, that's not everyone within the sort of... I don't want to lump everyone in the anti-trans movement. You've got a segment of people who are just a bit ignorant about it, right? Who are good people, they support trans people, but they... I think there's a subsection of people who are like, I think trans people should live the life they want to live. I completely respect them. They should have all their rights, but I don't think it's based in biology. I think that's probably quite a large portion of people who have that opinion. I wouldn't lump them in as like transphobes, right? But there are the radicals who are insanely transphobic. It's morphed from the over bigotry, like when we say today there's unconscious racism that exists in society, and everyone kind of has that to a degree. That's not like the days of the KKK when we say we hate people of color, and obviously when we say, oh, that was racist, the people on the right think we're accusing them of that, which they go, oh, we're not racist, it's ridiculous, right? But I think that transphobia is getting so bad that prominent people are acting in a way which is just not just ignorance and bigotry, it's downright hatefulness. I mean, I know this is just a silly little, it probably means nothing because it's an online thing, but there was this video I saw, I don't know if it was actually Jubilee or not, but it was like basically a group of women line up with balloons, right?
Yeah.
And the guy comes in, they pop their balloons, whether they like him or not. But this guy comes in really aggressively, by the way, and picks on the only trans woman in there and pops a balloon. Now, most of the women in there, thankfully, pop their own balloons in solidarity. But like that there isn't just like transphobia, ignorance. That was quite aggressive and violent. And then loads of men on Twitter were like, yeah, this is based, man. This is so cool. And like, you wonder why women pick the fucking bear.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's moving into one stage of transphobia, which is just utterly not even moral panic, but like aggressive panic. Because moral panic suggests that, oh my God, we just care about people and we're worried about what's happening. But it's going to move on to, the whole sort of bathroom debate. Oh, it's only because we care about women's spaces. That is sort of a leap now. It's a leapfrog to the next stage, which will be just trans people shouldn't exist. And that's happening more and more and more. And they'll use public policy like Wes Street and puberty blockers as a way to push that envelope, because it's not going to end there. I'm sorry to say, it won't, unless we all, not just us on our small YouTube channel, but everyone who considers themselves a progressive, not to mention LGBT Labour, who have been fucking pathetic, by the way. I mean, it's basically the John McDonnell writing a strongly worded letter. I mean, maybe they should disaffiliate. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to tell what internal Labour Party groups should be doing, because I can't stand the Labour Party, but I don't think they've been particularly strong.
No, they've been absolutely shit. I think there was a tweet or maybe a post on Blue Sky that I saw the other day that was basically saying, like, if Labour turn up to any Pride events, we need to like drive them away, away. LGBT Labour, it's ridiculous. I do, I think there is
one comment I do quite like. I had it up earlier.
Oh yeah, go on.
Which is this one.
Do
you know Philosophy Tube?
Yeah. I'm very familiar.
Abigail showing up House of Dragon was literally one of the highlights. I can believe it, because it's weird that she's like a proper actor now, because I watched it back in the days of just like Philosophy Tube, and they were already pretty big at the time. But it was so weird to then see her in like mainstream pop culture. And I'm not even a pop culture guy, but I did watch House of Dragon. I was like, fucking Abigail Thorne. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, I was happy to see that. And of course, Abigail Thorne, since we're mentioning her, has also come out. I saw some of her tweets and I think a post on Blue Sky again, basically condemning this this puberty blockers ban, because it's not evidence, it's not well evidenced, and basically is just a transphobic push. We don't need it. And frankly, trans people in this country don't need the extra pressure of being forced through a transition that they don't want to go through. I think there's so much that we could talk about on this topic, because but actually I will say, with regards to that, the balloon popping, the video you mentioned where the guy walked in, popped the balloon of the trans woman really aggressively, and then all the other women popped their balloon. There were 2 women who didn't, and I was like, I was really disappointed that there were still 2 women.
I was disappointed, but to give him like credit, or not credit, but to say like, are they in that environment? Maybe they're scared. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't mean
maybe give them the benefit of the doubt.
But this is the thing though, is like, why there's a reason why majority of women are allies, whether strongly or kind of in favor of trans people, support them, is because like, as throughout history, when you go for one minority, it doesn't end there as well. It expands. And why would women, cis women, look at a man, aggressively treat a trans woman like that, and then go, oh, do you know what? I feel safe about men, and I feel safe about him. Like, do you think he's just going to be like this lovely guy, but then suddenly horrible to trans people? No, fuck that. If he's going to be like that to a trans woman, he'll be like that to anyone. And this is why, solidarity across the board is really, really important. Because I saw a comment in there as well to say, like, trans people are the gatekeepers to attacking gay people. So fucking true. I mean, again, when I was speaking to India Willoughby, she was saying about this American movement. Can't remember the name of the group, but they openly said in their like conference or whatever, or this weird little get together, should I say, and like, this is an opening, but we're going to come for everyone. That we want our Christian nationalism. So it's going to be trans people, but there's going to be gay people, minorities. So
this is of course, it's worth saying as well that like that aggression that he demonstrated comes from the same places like the trans panic aggression, which comes from a fragile masculinity. It's the idea, what do they fear about it? What makes them uncomfortable about it? What makes them uncomfortable about it is the idea that of something that they think is innate. Their manhood is something that could actually not be innate. Like, that could be something that could change, right? And if that thing could change, and it's the same thing that is behind homophobia as well as transphobia. It's like, no, you could be, your understanding of your masculinity could come apart at any moment. And that is what they find so terrifying. And the response to that is violence, because the way that the patriarchy itself is upheld is through violence, right? When we say that we're feminists, at least when I say I'm a feminist, what I understand by that
I
is,
consider myself a feminist.
and what we should understand by that is is we want the eradication of patriarchal norms and assumptions, and also the eradication of sexism, by which we obviously mean the attribution of negative characteristics based on biological essentialism to one's gender. Like,
I mean,
these things should be
you can
torn
basically
apart.
you can find the origin of all social conservatism and then like fascists is down to like insecurity, and a lot of men's sexual insecurity. I know that's a very hard topic to speak about, but I think it's absolutely true. Where does misogyny come from? I think it's because, those who are really, really sexist hate the fact that women are confident and successful, right? And, there's a period when you're a young man and you're like a young teenager, there's a period in your life where like sexism becomes very appealing, and especially with the algorithms and stuff. I mean, I've spoke about for myself before, like when I was on YouTube at like the age of fucking 10, 11, all the things that will push my way was like third wave feminism, all this sort of crap, right? So like it's very appealing when you're that age, because guess what? When you're going through your, this sort of teenage pressure, you are very vulnerable and you're not confident, sexually not confident. So then that's why sexism is so appealing to young men. The difference is though, for me, I fucking grew up. I grew out of it. I became confident myself. And guess what? Me being confident in my own self has actually made me far more socially progressive, probably than any other logical argument, by the way. It's the fact that I just, I didn't blame other people for any insecurities I had. And I think that's what it boils down to. And there's a reason why that guy, he didn't just pop that balloon. He had to aggressively do it, because aggression comes from insecurity. And I would say sexual insecurity.
Yeah, big time. No, I 100% agree. We should honestly talk about feminism and like our understanding of patriarchal violence, like in Bell Hook's writings, because I think it's really interesting. But I do want to, before we go on to our final story, I do just want to draw attention to this comment because I found it quite funny. Cog's going to lose his young hair if he keeps tugging it like that, because I've been doing this because I haven't got any product in my hair at all today, just because I missed out.
The thing is, someone said something really, it was funny but also a bit sad, and it was like, well, they said that hair transplants are going to be a class issue one day, and basically bald people are going to be seen as poor because hair transplant is becoming more and more prominent and it's really expensive. So I'm not saying that you need one, by the way. I just thought the topic of you tugging your hair.
It's a good link in. It's a good link in.
I've got Indian hair, so I'm very lucky. Yes, it's blonde.
Good luck.
I dyed it. I'm very lucky with that, and I'm very happy about that.
Good luck. Yeah, I've got to be careful and make sure that I put product in my hair before I start the show, but I just forgot today, so that's where we're at.
All right, it's the debrief.
Yeah, it's the debrief. It's more relaxed, but my hair.
I'm not wearing a shirt or blazer, so
you just got a hoodie on.
I just got a hoodie on.
Fair enough. Okay, cool. Let's do our last story. We won't spend long on this one because I think we just want to we've spoken a lot about the farmers' protest before.
Do you want to say that I don't think you've got the 8th graphic uploaded?
Did I?
I think so. Are you sure? Unless it's in a different.
Maybe I'm being silly. Let's have a quick look. Let's see. Layer 7. You know what? I did upload it, but I didn't put it on the file. There it is. There we go. This is the graphic that we need for this story. Apologies, everyone. There we go. That's in the right place now. Excuse me. You can see it's a bit of a behind the scenes sort of look into how our production works. Yeah, that's going to be difficult when we do it like this. It's a bit of a behind the scenes glimpse into how this works or doesn't work. Okay, cool. Let's just go over this because it's interesting. So the Millionaires Farmers protest is set to continue, as Reuters reports. Hundreds of tractors blocked streets in central London on Wednesday, the latest protest by farmers against the government after it ended an exemption from inheritance tax for agricultural families. The measure, dubbed the tractor tax by critics, was introduced by the government to boost funds to pay for strained public services, but farmers say it will destroy family farms and reduce food production. Farmers lined their tractors up close to the Houses of Parliament on Wednesday, hoping to convince the government to change course or face escalating protests. The protests in London and the southeast led to this moment posted in a video on X from Josiah Mortimer, which drew criticism of the protests from online.
Can't get through because of the tractors. The ambulance is trying to get through here. Got its blue lights on. Still the ambulance behind there. So, yeah, and these tractors are blocking the whole of the left lane, obviously. Now they're moving because the green light's gone, but still quite a backlog there. Bit of a jam. Oh, still trying to get through. No, big tractors in the way. There we go. That's the other side of the road. Okay. Oh no, there's more tractors down that direction where it's going.
Yeah, so I think there's an interesting discussion to be had here, but I do want to caveat it by saying that the Just Stop Oil protesters and what was the other group that did the protest, Extinction Rebellion, also had what's known as a blue lights policy. The blue lights policy is if you see blue lights, you move the blockage from the road, and that's a lot easier to do when you've got people rather than a big vehicle, right? So, what do we think of this in terms of hypocrisy, in terms of millionaires, and what's going on here?
Well, so first of all, let's talk about the hypocrisy of it, and let's look at the defenders. Obviously, this is massively hypocritical. And you're right to point out that when you're doing a demonstration of people, it's far easier to move out of the way. And as you just pointed out, which most people don't understand, most people don't realize, is that they have a policy which is to get the fuck out of the way when an ambulance comes. I think that's fair enough. I think that's basic solidarity. I think every protest should say, move out of the way if an ambulance comes. These big, massive tractors can't do that. And what you're seeing here is all the accusations that were leveled against environmentalists and Just Stop Oil is the same that can be said about these farmers. Now, here's the thing. One, to me, is important, and one isn't that important. And I will say this. I support everyone's right to protest. I support the farmers striking. I absolutely support that, because I'm not, I'm not a hack or partisan hack where I'm like, oh, I only support when it's my own cause. Now, I completely predicted the response to this, because the response has been to defend the tractors, and they've given their excuses. Some people have been saying, well, they had a permit, whereas many Just Stop Oil people didn't. All right, I'll come on to that in a second, but I entirely predicted that once these farmers go out and strike, right, or landowners, and people start saying, well, you're disrupting people's lives, I said those that support them won't then say, you're right, that's a fair point, however, this issue is important. They will defend it and just bat away the accusations, which is exactly what's happened. Because I said, look, for people, particularly on the right, they're like, I think we should protest because I agree with it, but those that I don't agree with shouldn't protest. Well, here's me, as a socialist, as a lefty, saying, I support your right to protest. But one is important and one isn't important. I suppose it's very hard to have this kind of argument and discussion with people if they don't really believe that climate change is either real, a big deal, or man-made. Because I was going to say, well, those that demonstrate, like Just Stop Oil type people, they're doing it for a real cause, which is to save this fucking planet. Now, objectively, that is true. And then protesting with tractors because you're unhappy that those who have a farm worth than £1 million or more have to pay a 50% reduction rates in inheritance tax, basically an end to a tax break. I don't think these two are in any way comparable. But again, if you're speaking to someone who thinks that climate change isn't even an issue, then that's hard to convey. But even still, I can say that Just Stop Oil, what they're doing, I completely support because it's a real issue. landowners, wealthy landowners who are striking because they don't want to pay the taxes they should be paying, I think is wrong. They should be paying it, but I still support the right to strike. And, right-wing pundits, whatever, have that contradiction because they're not principled. They're just like, well, this is my view. I like these people. I support it. I can say I don't like a lot of these people doing it. A lot of them are wealthy people who, someone like Jeremy Clarkson, by the way, literally bought farmland just so he could get out of paying taxes. I don't like that. I don't think it's very patriotic as well. Like you don't want to give some of your money to the NHS. But I still support their right to strike. I'm consistent.
I think it's always worth emphasizing, which I did on the original segment I did on these protests, that you'd have to own 100 acres worth of 100 football pitches worth of farmland. That's equating to 200 or 300 acres. I think it was 200 acres in order to be affected by this, right? 100 football pitches worth of farmland. And you're going to come to me saying that you're pleading poverty as a millionaire, rocking up in your in your Range Rover. I don't think so. Mate. I think we've got to take this seriously and say, no, if you're a millionaire, if you've got £1 million worth of assets, I'm sorry, you have to pay your taxes. And you're paying it at half the rate which everybody else is, anybody, and only if you don't gift it to your child before you pass away. Like there's so many things that I wanted to draw attention to a couple of comments. Vicky very much agrees with you. There's I don't mind their protested. It's the hypocrisy.
Well, I think all of us should support their right to strike, though. So I to me, that's kind of non-negotiable, right? Because I don't want to be the people that I only support those that I agree with should go out and protest. No, like to me, that's a fundamental. I will say, I say it's a human right. Actually, I think it's part of democracy. You don't live in a democracy if people aren't allowed to organize and protest. So, like, if someone says, "Oh, I don't think they should do it because I disagree with them," I'll be like, "I don't like that from you. You should be." It's not just about consistency. It's about principles. Like I don't want to live in a totalitarian government, and that means if someone wants to go out and make a massive protest about supporting Brexit, do it. Good for you. Good.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yes, and it's actually like in a strange way supporting. Them protesting does actually uphold our right to protest if they are also defending the right to protest. The problem is when they go on media, they're not defending the right to protest. They're defending their right to protest.
That's why the right, who say they care about freedom, once again, it's pure projection. They don't give a shit about freedom. It's only, I would say again, mostly the left that care about freedom, because these people aren't, like, when Just Stop Oil or anti-austerity protests happen, the main argument you hear in the media is that we should have a right to protest. It's good for democracy. It's about freedom. That's typically the argument you hear. And then obviously they go into the specifics. I've not heard a single person say, well, everyone should have the right to protest. It's not. It's usually just about the specifics, which is fine. Speak about the specifics, which is, ending a tax cut. But why I'm not hearing people and voices in the media saying, I support whether you're a lefty, whatever, everyone should have that right. And you don't hear that. Not enough, anyway. I've not heard of it.
I agree. No, I agree. Not enough people have said it. Like, even on kind of more left-leaning media, like even look at Novara Media, like not enough people have said, like, outright, okay, we need to be supporting their right to protest, even if we don't agree with what they've got to say. Jim Speak gifted 10 Turn Left memberships. Really appreciate that, Jim. You are an absolute star. See you all here all the time. Good stuff. I just want to draw attention, though, to this comment because I thought it was quite funny. Michael pointed out that the tractors were all bloody sparkling. They're probably not being used for farming. There was an anecdote, I think it might have been Channel 4 or something, where interviewing people getting on the train to London, and they were like, oh, well, how's the farmers' protests like? How do you feel about the farmers' protests? And this guy said, well, yeah, I was quite supportive of the farmers' protests, and I saw a load of them in their tweed jackets and flat caps getting on the train. But as I got into second class, I realised that they'd all climbed into first class. Like, I wonder why.
Yeah.
And also this one is, I think, very prescient. Actually, talking on Zoom is more dangerous.
No, I feel like that seems like an admission from your end, doesn't it?
No, it's a reference to. I thought that for a second, but it's a reference to the people who were arrested for doing the Zoom call blocking the road.
Sorry, how did I miss that one?
Yes,
yeah, exactly. I mean, when are the arrests going to happen? Because people, in first class were saying, "Oh, we're going to drive our tractors here." No, of course that was
5 years, was it? one of them got 5 years?
It was 5. No, it was 5 years, but that was one of them got 5 years. But like the combined total was like 20 years because like a handful of them, wasn't it?
Absurd.
Absolutely absurd. Jail for fucking protesting. No, sorry, for planning a protest on Zoom.
Yeah,
Insane.
Wild. And you've got as curious girl Emma says, like you've got ambulances actively being blocked, like people's lives actually really being put at risk, and or and or potentially, we don't know, somebody could have lost their life there, and still the punishment doesn't really match the doesn't even come close to that, which people got for planning a protest, not even carrying out a protest, but planning a protest. Yeah, cool. Did you want to add anything else on the farmer story, or shall we wrap it up?
Honestly, I think we covered it a couple of times. There's not much to really speak about apart from what we've already said. So, cool. Yeah, we can probably wrap it up. Awesome. If there's anything interesting you want to say about something else that we haven't covered? I don't know.
No, not at this moment, because I'm also doing the show on Monday. I'm hosting the show on Monday, so I don't want to talk about anything that we haven't covered tonight, because I'm going to run out of stories if nothing interesting happens over the rest of the weekend. But I'm sure it will. It's British politics. This is the way it works. Yeah, let's go for the ending then. Cool. Yep, I think that's all we've got time for. So thank you to everyone who joined in for the debrief, and thank you, Curtis, for joining me tonight. Always appreciate you, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll.
I thought quickly say actually we should plug ourselves. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. If you're happy,
you're the host. You got to ask your.
Oh god. Okay, so if you haven't got it written down, but yes, if you like our stuff and you want to support us, please do go to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. Or just turnleftmedia.co.uk, actually, that'll take you there, where you can either donate a certain amount as a one-off donation, or you can become a monthly subscriber through our Patreon, or by other means. We always love if people will help donate to us, because we want to become a fully fledged media organization. We are volunteers doing this around our paid work. It's why the production on this has been so shoddy. It's because we're not professionals. We're just doing it around our paid work. We're doing our best. And also, I think it's important to say that when we're asking you for support, we also thank those of you who are already supporting us, whether that's financially or just being here, just commenting, because we love each and every one of you. You have been absolutely amazing. I've seen the comments going, and it's absolutely brilliant to see so many of you here. Absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much to everybody who's watching as well. Yeah, absolutely. It's just superb. Yeah, so with that,
you mentioned our schedule for the next month or two, maybe. Obviously,
yes, it's
quite busy.
Good shout.
You noticed it's not a Sunday; it's a Saturday. So for the time being, we're going to be doing one less show per week. It's going to be Mondays as normal, which is the normal Island show, 7:30 p.m. Thursdays, normal Island, 7:30 p.m. And then Saturdays is the debrief. So we don't like that. Rather than Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Obviously, in the future, hopefully we can raise more funds and stuff. We'll be doing more content. For me personally, though, I'll be trying to make more commentary videos in between them. So you're still going to have some commentary. But I say towards the end of the month, maybe with like the 19th, 20th, I mean, we're probably going to go quiet for Christmas, aren't we?
Yeah, we'll have a quieter time. Quieter over Christmas. But we'll look into seeing what we can pre-record to release around Christmas, just to see, just so we're not going completely quiet. Because obviously we want to feel, we want you guys to feel like you've got some entertainment over the Christmas from us as well, but feel like we're contributing something
rather than just watching Elf on repeat. Even though I love that film. I was trying to watch Christmas films last night on Netflix. They're rubbish. They're really, really bad now. And I tried watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That's off all streaming platforms. So, yeah. We'll do a pre-recorded Turn Left show for Christmas. Maybe you enjoy that, I don't know.
Yeah. I think that could be quite interesting, because we can do some like more evergreen topics. That'd be quite interesting. But yes, so with that scheduling in mind, bear in mind that we will have a Normal Island show as normal on Monday at 7:30 p.m. So we will see you all then. So from everyone here at Turn Left, thank you so much again for joining in, and have a wonderful weekend.